Every year, there is at least one anime that the community demands you to be there for. It can range from either extremely hype on an incredible emotional presentation, but there is something that a new anime brings to the table that everyone is talking about. Of course, there was a time where I was not paying attention to seasonal debuts, so for a lot of animes, I missed that demand. I wasn't there when Genkai Sensen dropped, I wasn't there watching Erased weekly, and I for sure wasn't there when ReZero was hot regardless of the Great Brim and Amelia discourse. It took me a while to pay attention to the seasonal conversation, and by the time I began to engage in it myself, I was able to be there for the debut of Mob Psycho. Mob Psycho was a series that I was not sure what to expect from it. The only thing I did know was that some of my favorite content creators were planning to watch it, and that it was also done by Studio Bones, who had captured my heart with My Hero Academia. What we got from the show, looking as it has finally concluded, was far more surprising and compelling than I think anybody was expecting. A combination that was brought about due to such a glorious staff, but before I get to them, I want to discuss the story itself that made this show worth everyone's time. The beginning of this show introduced us to Shigeo Kageyama, commonly known as Mob, a boy who lacked a more attractive appeal but had a heart of gold nonetheless. His journey lies in becoming better and improving in life without the use of his psychic powers, something that with his caliber of psychic energy could easily take, but that is not who he is. His immense powers led to him keeping his emotions in check, as when the scale tips too far, he could easily lose control. The game of control is not something to master so easily. Even the most calm and collected person can lose their temper given the situation, and it simply comes down to being human. However, that journey and the obstacles that will present themselves is exactly what we as the audience tagged along for. Season 1, though still serving as the build-up for bigger events to come, had Mob confronting a range of people and spirits from Dimple, Taro, and the Club members at the time. Each time with Mob experiencing a specific emotion, we also saw him change people. The rule he applied to himself, he spread to others, saying that you should not use your powers to harm anyone or for personal gain. Seeing such a good-hearted kid fight to maintain control of his emotions while dealing with people who will use their powers to bring the more unstable side of his character out is the exact compelling narrative which hooked everyone who watched this series. It helped that the presentation of the show was in a league of its own, with all sorts of amazing talent and passionate people elevating the source material to such impressive heights. It's not every day such an all-star staff get to have consistent positive conditions in order to produce such a high-quality product, but thankfully Mob Psycho is one of them. Yet even so, you aren't truly watching Mob Psycho just for the fights. We are all looking forward to seeing these characters, and Shigeo especially, grow, and that takes us into season 2 that to me brought nothing but change. When you go back and watch season 2's trailer, you can see a combination of people rooting for Mob and saying "if I." These two words referring to Mob beginning to make his own choices and actions more visible to others around him, joining the Body Improvement and Telepathy Club, attempting to go for student council president, and even showing his powers to somebody else who technically did him wrong were all things that spurred on growth. Even with the season 2 opening at the very end, you get the message of your life being your own. Only you can make effort to change and become the person you want to be, and that in itself is a powerful message. There are plenty of people who may be sitting right now unsatisfied with themselves or who they are as people, but only they can get up and make the choices that will put them in a better place. Choices that sometimes you may need a little push to help get to. This was displayed with the encounter of Mob versus Mogami in an attempt to free Minori Asagiri from the spirit's control. Season 2 delivered one of the most cinematic and crazily animated episodes that had people wondering how in the world was this even possible. A fight that went so incredibly hard in an effort to free a girl, which also led to her changing. Minori went from somebody who bullied others to crying and vowing that she will become a better person. It's moments like these that if Mob can help somebody end up at this point of growth with the aid of his powers, then maybe they aren't the burden that he initially thought they were. Now, I've been talking about Mob, but this video would not be complete unless I talked about Reigen too. Reigen is the iconic symbol when people think about Mob Psycho. He's an absolute package, but just like Mob, has a good heart despite his shenanigans. Season 2 episodes 6 and 7 gave us some insight into what Reigen is really about. He was getting a bit too greedy and trying to keep Mob caged for his own gain. This led to a bit of a break between the two, and Reigen ended up getting himself in a situation with more bite than he can chew. As I said before, Mob is a person who didn't want to claim everything with the use of his powers. Though Reigen didn't have any powers to begin with, he did have the same ambition to improve the direction of his life. Regardless of the plan being not so foolproof, he landed somewhere that made him happier than what he was doing before, and also became an important figure in Mob's life when it comes to steering him in the direction of not abusing his powers. I think what makes Reigen such a phenomenal character outside of his charm and antics is that he also speaks to the older audience who watches this show as well. Adulthood is far from amusing, but you can make it bearable. Maybe not so much off a whim, but you can still change the trajectory of your life even as an adult. It's important though not to get lost in that process to get to the point you seek, and remember to value and reflect on your character. Something that regardless of the short dispute our duo had, Mob kept in mind no matter what was said. Reigen's moment of reflection is a prime example of the growth that was occurring during season 2. Even the Claw squad members from season 1 turned a new leaf for the better, but the biggest obstacle of change that came from this season came from Toichiro. Toichiro was the exact opposite of Mob when it comes to their psychic powers. Full of pride and ego, his mentality endangered not only society but even his family life as well. Once again, just like the battle against Mogami, Mob fights to protect everyone while enduring a wave of emotion. At one point, Mob gave up on trying to change Toichiro and was ready to let him have it. Yet in the end, he still decided to save him from the fate that would have killed him due to his own powers. If this was the beginning of the series, Mob may have acted much differently, but that strive to change not only himself but those around him for the better is ever so evident in this scene. Doing just a little better every day can go a long way for one person, and we see all of everyone's efforts come together through the entirety of Season 3. Season 3 clearly conveyed that this story was all coming to an end. A mix of triumph and confession took place in this season that once again showcased growth and improvement. The beginning of the season brought Dimple's story to an emotional conclusion. Like I stated before, there are just some things you cannot take with powers, and recognition is one of those things. Dimple realizing that what he wanted deep down was just a friend was the perfect moment to showcase that even omnipotence cannot replace what's deep down in your heart. Mob was always a friend, and he was willing to protect that one friend even if it meant he had to sacrifice himself to do so. We went from seeing Dimple as a bad spirit to an ally, and finally somebody we wish we didn't have to say goodbye to. This type of storytelling always hits the right notes because it always comes full circle. I think the plotline that surprised me the most this season though was the Telepathy Club and Tome. Passion has been another common theme within Mob Psycho. It's one of the things Reigen encourages those who are young to enjoy and to create memories of said precious youth. I know this section of the season might have just been whatever to some people, but I felt the frustration that Tome was dealing with. There is nothing more frustrating than wanting something so badly that you may feel alone in that pursuit. Not everybody in life will share the same level of passion about something, but the Telepathy Club meant something to her. With her graduating and moving on to the bigger parts of life, however, that time at the club was coming to an end. I thought it was pretty great for Mob and the members to give it their all one last time, which allowed her dream to come true. The episode itself was a visual and artistic spectacle, and once again proved that you are not simply watching Mob Psycho for just the fights. Passion will follow you no matter what stage of life you are in, but in this case, it was more about creating a memory that united everyone through that passion. Something that I think almost any anime fan can relate to when it comes to being in a community of people who share the same hype as you. The last part of this series is something I think we all knew was coming, but not in the way we thought it would be. We always knew that Mob had a crush on Tsubomi, but we weren't expecting her moving away to be the push that would make him ask her out. At the same time, we always knew that there was something greater within Mob when looking at his powers, but we did not know that this situation would end up setting it free. Mob has always been changing the people around him to be better and in many ways developing himself as well. However, the biggest battle for Shigeo Kageyama has always lied in the acceptance of his powers. The last arc showcased that his own powers recognized that rejection and took it upon itself to take control. Season 3's opening had a message at the end of it being one and only one. As there are probably a multitude of meanings people may interpret, the one I came to is that you have one and only one life to live. So with that, don't spend it fighting yourself. Whether it's the part of yourself that you dislike or the part of yourself that you are trying to make better, accept all of it, and most importantly, accept yourself for who you are. The battle of acceptance and self-love can be difficult alone, but Mob was not alone this time. He had many people who reached out to him, but the one who really made it when it mattered the most was Reigen. The finale of Mob Psycho showcased Reigen pushing his limits to reach that kid who was battling with so much inside, and I know it had people very emotional. Not only that, but Dimple turned out to be alright. In one of the best scenes to hit anime period, Reigen was completely honest with himself, with Mob, but most importantly, telling Mob to accept himself too. Those words reached not only the essence of Mob's powers, but Mob himself as well. There is no better way that this story could have concluded than with these two sharing an emotional moment. Mob is a kid that fought so hard to keep it under control, and that is extremely admirable. However, it is okay to not be okay, and with the proper support system can help you get right back on track. The level of emotion throughout this entire show has been so compelling, and I can confidently say that Mob Psycho 100 is a certified masterpiece from presentation to the narrative. I'm typically reluctant to flat out say the term masterpiece because the reception of using said term can be quite divisive. However, I wholeheartedly believe that this series is one worthy of that title, and I am once again thankful to not only the author one, but the staff behind this series for bringing us a phenomenal show that you just had to be there for. Shows like this come around once every blue moon, and I hope that everybody who watched it felt the love that was the story of Shigeo Kageyama and the journey of his growth. That's pretty much it for me though. As always, thank you for watching, and make sure to leave all your thoughts about Mob Psycho in the comments section down below. If you enjoyed this, think about hitting that subscribe button as well. It will help me out quite a bit. Stay warm out there, and I will catch you guys in the next video.